So, Sauron, am I right? We learned all about his shenanigans with the people of Numenor, but let's back up to right after the War of Wrath and the downfall of Morgoth. Sauron actually humbled himself before Eonwë and repented, if only out of fear, but Eonwë told him he'd have to come back to Valinor for judgment. Sauron didn't want to face the humiliation and lose all the power he had gained under Morgoth, so he hid himself in Middle-earth and went back to being evil. I also mentioned how there were some elves who remained in Middle-earth, ruled over by Gil-galad. He and Elrond and Círdan and a bunch of them lived in the Grey Havens where elves would set forth from when they wanted to return to Valinor, but there was another group who lived in the area called a Region. One of these was Celebrimbor, son of Curufin, who had all of his grandfather's skill and fortunately none of his father's personality. Middle-earth is seemingly at peace, but Sauron quickly began to see where he could press his advantage. He assumes the Valar have forgotten Middle-earth, and he looks to put all the remaining peoples under his rule. He found men easiest to corrupt, but really he wanted to get at the elves because he knew they were more powerful. Since he could change his shape and appear wise and beautiful, he would walk among both elves and men to secretly spread his dark influence. He didn't go to the Havens because he knew Elrond and Gil-galad were too smart for his disguise, but he was perfectly welcome in Eregion. He called himself Anatar, Lord of Gifts, and shared all of his knowledge of craftsmanship that the elves were hungry for. Eventually, with this newfound knowledge, the elven smiths began to make rings of power, all under Sauron's guidance. In secret, he created the One Ring to rule them all, and whenever he wore it, he was aware of everything done by those who were wearing the lesser rings, and he could even control their thoughts and actions. The elves, however, were not as gullible as he thought, and as soon as they put their own rings on, they felt Sauron's presence and immediately took them off. Then Sauron gets ticked and he goes against the elves in open war, demanding that they give him all the rings since they couldn't have made them without his help. But the elves just run away, taking with them the 3 most powerful rings that they had made. Sauron wanted these really bad, but the elves kept them hidden and never used them so long as Sauron had the ruling ring. War then goes on constantly between Sauron and the elves, and Eregion is destroyed and Celebrimbor is killed. Around this time, Elrond creates the stronghold of Rivendell, and it lasts for a very long time, but Sauron collects all the remaining rings and began to distribute them to the peoples of Middle-earth, giving 7 to the dwarves and 9 to the men, thus gaining his most powerful servants. Darkness began to spread over the land, and he starts to remultiply the orcs, and many more elves flee away over the sea. Sauron becomes the most powerful figure in Middle-earth, but then all the craziness in Numenor happened, and Sauron's body was destroyed, although he returned in spirit form to Middle-earth. While Sauron was gone, Gil-galad had grown much stronger, and then Elendil washed up on the shore, and they became friends. Elendil established the kingdom of Arnor in the north, while his sons Isildur and Anarion founded Gondor in the south. These kingdoms rose to great power and splendor, but Sauron is like that mosquito that won't go away and that you can't seem to kill, so he once again began to cause problems. He ran Isildur out of his stronghold, leaving Anarion to try and hold on to Gondor all by himself, and once Elendil and Gil-galad hear about this, they know they have to do something. So they form the last alliance of elves and men, and Elendil and Gil-galad bulldoze all the way up to Barad-dûr and lay siege to it for 7 years. During this time, Anarion is killed, and at last Sauron comes out and takes on Gil-galad and Elendil mano a mano. Both kings are slain, but Isildur cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand, destroying his form once again and forcing Sauron to remain intangible and in hiding for many, many years. Peace seems to return to Middle-earth, but not all of Sauron's forces were destroyed, and the foundations of Barad-dûr remained. And of course, most importantly, the One Ring was not destroyed. Isildur took it for himself after cutting it off of Sauron, and even though Elrond and Círdan are like, yo dude, you should probably destroy that, Isildur is like, no, I deserved this after my father and brother died, and I also was the one who killed Sauron, thank you very much. And the more he looks at it, he's like, dang, this thing is pretty, and he refuses to allow any harm to come to it. Isildur leaves his nephew in charge of Gondor and sets out north, intending to take over Arnor since Elendil is dead. But along the way, he gets attacked by orcs, and pretty much all of his company is killed, including 3 out of his 4 sons. Isildur survives for a little while, using the ring to become invisible, but the orcs tracked him by scent, and the ring eventually betrayed Isildur, slipping off his finger while he was swimming in the river. The orcs promptly filled him full of arrows, and the One Ring was seemingly lost. Isildur's youngest son, Valandil, had been left behind safe in Rivendell when all of this was going on, and he eventually became king of Arnor. A lot of men had been killed during the war, however, and as generations passed, the kingdom declined more and more until it dissolved into nothingness, remaining only as a small group of men wandering in the wild. The line of descendants from Isildur remained unbroken, however, and there was still hope that the kingdom could rise again. Gondor, on the other hand, was doing great for many, many years, and even though it slowly began to diminish as well, it remained a bastion of defense against Mordor and kept the slowly returning evil of Sauron from spreading farther west. Unfortunately, however, the line of Anarion died out, leaving the House of Stewards to rule the kingdom. Also, the kingdom of Rohan was established around this time, and they had great friendship with Gondor and assisted them in their battles against Mordor. Elrond was also kicking it over in Rivendell, using one of the 3 elven rings to make it a place of rest and safety for the weary and oppressed. Another of the rings was possessed by Galadriel, which she used similarly in her own domain of Lothlorien. The keeper of the 3rd ring, however, was a close-kept secret known only by Elrond, Galadriel, and Círdan. All the elves began to perceive at this time that their time was coming to an end, and soon men would become the driving force of Middle-earth, but then the weed that is Sauron rose up once again. There was this great big nice pretty forest called Greenwood the Great, and everybody thought it was awesome, but then out of nowhere darkness starts to creep over it, and it became full of nasty spiders, and its name was changed to Mirkwood. This was because of, you guessed it, Sauron, and he had set up shop in the Tower of Dol Guldur and was slowly spreading his terror once again. Around this time, however, a bunch of old men show up on the shores of Middle-earth, and everybody's like, hey, who the heck are these dudes? But it turns out that they were the 5 wizards, Maiar sent by the Valar to help combat the return of Sauron and to assist elves and men in any and all good deeds. The most powerful among them were Mithrandir and Curanir, aka Gandalf and Saruman. Gandalf knew what was up, and he was very suspicious of what was going on in Mirkwood. He managed to chase Sauron out of Dol Guldur, but if we've learned anything, it's that you can't keep an evil Maia down, because he came back like he always does. And so the White Council, consisting of Saruman, Gandalf, Galadriel, Elrond, and Círdan, was formed. Saruman was the leader, and he began to study the lore of the Great Rings and to become much more proud and self-absorbed. As the shadow continued to grow, Gandalf feels more and more uneasy, and he goes back to Dol Guldur again, this time confirming that it is indeed ya boy Sauron. So he tells Elrond about this, and Elrond is like, it's all Isildur's fault, he should have just destroyed that dang ring when he had the chance. But Gandalf is like, hey, Sauron doesn't have it, so that means we have a chance if we get a move on doing something. But when they talk to the rest of the council, Saruman is like, nah, let's not rush into anything, the ring probably just washed into the sea anyway, it's no big deal. Because Saruman had spent too long studying the Rings of Power, and now he wanted to eventually take the One Ring for himself and be even more powerful than Sauron. But as time wears on and things get even more gnarly in Mirkwood, Gandalf finally convinces the council to act, and they successfully drive Sauron out of Dol Guldur. Really, that didn't help anything though, because Sauron just went back to Mordor and started fortifying himself so that he was even stronger than he was before. The council then stopped meeting, and Saruman hid himself in his basement and stopped talking to any of the others. Oh yeah, and around this time the One Ring was found in just about the most unexpected way possible. See, after Isildur lost it in the river, it was picked up by this little weirdo who took it deep down underneath the mountains, and he held onto it until it was taken by a wandering halfling. Who were the halflings, and where did they come from? Good questions, the answers to which you are not going to find here. But the halflings had kept to themselves so well that nobody had even given them the slightest thought outside of Gandalf. So Gandalf learns that the One Ring has been found, and he is naturally very concerned, but he isn't too sure what to do. Neither he nor any of the other council members could use the ring without being corrupted, but they couldn't destroy it, and they couldn't just hope that they could keep it hidden and Sauron wouldn't ever notice. So Gandalf just keeps a watch on the land of the halflings, but lo and behold, Sauron hears the rumors, and he sends his ring wraiths out to retrieve the ring. And then transpired all the events of the Lord of the Rings, which I am not going to go into full detail about here, because the book doesn't go into full detail either, and who even has time for that? Basically, the heir of Isildur, Aragorn, son of Arathorn, rose up and went to war, along with the people of Rohan and Gondor, and Gandalf was there too, and a few elves and dwarves here and there. Saruman got put back in his place, and they managed to prevent Sauron from destroying Rohan and Gondor, but it looked like it was all going to be in vain because Sauron was just too darn strong. But then, the most unexpected thing happened by the most unexpected people. Frodo and Sam, 2 of those weird little halflings, managed to sneak into Mordor right under Sauron's nose and drop the One Ring into the volcano where it was originally forged, melting it away into nothing. Then at long freaking last, Sauron was completely, totally, utterly, and entirely destroyed, and he actually never came back. Aragorn took on the kingship of Gondor and Arnor once again, and the 4th Age of Middle-earth began, an age of peace and prosperity. All of this was indirectly thanks to Gandalf, and it turns out that he was the one who had the 3rd Elven Ring the whole time. Círdan actually had it originally, but he gave it to Gandalf, and he was like, you're gonna need this, bro, I'll be waiting for you with the boat whenever you're ready to peace out. That time did in fact come, because Middle-earth had finally passed into the hands of men, and the time of the elves was over. The last of the Noldor and all the remaining ring-bearers boarded the last ship and sailed away into the west, past the end of the sea, through the sky, and onto Valinor. And so, after so many years and sorrows and joys, the end of the story had finally come for the elves, the Eldar, the people of the stars. Yes, this is the end. I am recording this as I have just finished the very last slide, and so I will soon be working on finishing the whole video. But yes, the Silmarillion Abridged has at long last, come to an end. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who has watched even a single video of it. It would appear that there was like 3 or 4 people who were consistently following it. And if you are one of those 3 or 4 people who have watched almost every single video, please like reveal yourself in the comments below. I would love to see who you are, and thank you a little more personally. But yeah, this project, when I started it, I did not realize what I was getting into. I definitely don't regret doing it, but I will probably not be doing anything like it again. I've gotten a few requests, and I'm sorry, but I don't think I'll be doing this again. But it was definitely an experience, and I'm very glad that you guys, some of you, you know, came and joined me for it, and I did enjoy myself for the most part. So thank you so much for taking a little time to watch me indulge in my Tolkien obsession and do a great disservice to one of the greatest books ever written. But yeah, there will be, I have another video coming out in a couple weeks, which will be a little more of interest to some of you, at least people who subscribe for X-Men content, and then I'll be talking a little more about my plans for next year. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.